Today at Sravasti Abbey we are celebrating Lama Tsongkhapa Day, which is a day that we do many offerings, invite our friends to share in the day. He is the lineage founder of the Gelugpa tradition in Tibetan Buddhism. And I found a short biography of him to sort of share with all of you. He was one of the most remarkable beings in our world. And he lived about 600 years ago, so not like way back, you know, beyond our historical sort of framework, but he lived 600 years ago in Tibet. And I wanted to share some of the things that this incredible being did when he was in our world, and to share the preciousness, the rarity, the brilliance, and that he is, since he's kind of one of the Tibetan Buddhist great teachers, to feel inspired and to just by hearing his story. This is what they say, is that they say the biography of a great Lama is called a namtar, a liberating biography, since it inspires the listeners to follow the example of the teacher and achieve liberation and awakening. And so Lama Tsongkhapa's story is one of those. Atisha's history, Geshe Zopa says, is one of these namtars. Padmasambhava's life is also a namtar. So these great teachers that inspire us by their deeds when they were here in the world, then, you know, the purpose is to inspire us to say, I can do this. I've had this person who has left these remarkable teachings of the Buddha here for me to practice. So both Buddha Shakyamuni and Padmasambhava prophesy Tsongkhapa's birth and his attainments. So the story goes that at the time of the Buddha, a young boy who was a previous incarnation of Lama Tsongkhapa presented him a crystal rosary. And he received a conch shell from the Buddha in return. The Buddha prophesied Manjushri would be born as a boy in Tibet, would found Ganden Monastery, and would present a crown to the Buddha statue there in Tibet. So the Buddha gave that boy, 2,600 years ago, the future name Sumati Kirti, which is Losondrapa. Padmasambhava also prophesied a monk named Losondrapa who would be born near China, would be regarded as an emanation of a great bodhisattva, and would make a Buddha statue into a Sambhogakaya representation, which I'll describe later on. So when he was born, Lama Tsongkhapa, there were a lot of those auspicious signs that his family experienced that indicated that their child was somebody special. In fact, the dreams indicated that the child would be an emanation of Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, and Vajrapani. His future teacher, Choje Dundrup Rinchen, came and visited and presented the parents with a gift, a statue, and a letter. A sandalwood tree, as so it goes, grew from the spot where his umbilical cord fell to the ground. Each leaf had a natural picture of the Buddha Sinhanada and was thus called Kumbun, 100,000 body images. The Gelug monastery called Kumbun was built on that spot. Okay, so now the parents have got some indication that their child is not an ordinary child. Most of our parents don't have those type of indications. He never misbehaved. There we go, there's quite remarkable. He instinctively engaged in bodhisattva-type actions, was extremely intelligent and always wanted to learn. At the age of 3, he took his lay vows from the 4th Karmapa. Soon after, his father invited Choje Dundrup Rinchen to their home, and the Lama offered to care for the education of the boy, and the father happily agreed. Lama Tsongkhapa stayed at home until he was 7, studying with Choje Dundrup Rinpoche. Just seeing the Lama read, he instinctively knew how to read without needing to be taught. During this time, his teacher gave the boy many tantric initiations, and by the age of 7, he had already memorized all of their rituals and was already having visions of Vajrapani. He frequently dreamt of Atisha, who lived 300 years before him and was a great teacher from India who came to Tibet, gave us the lamp of the path to awakening. And this dream was a sign that he would correct misunderstandings of the Dharma in Tibet and restores purity, combining Sutra and Tantra as Atisha had done. So then, when he was 7 years old, he took his novice vows from Choje Dundrup Rinchen and received his ordination name Losomdrapa. He went to, then he left home when he was 7, and he never returned. He studied at a Drakun Kagyu monastery at first, where he learned the Mahamudra tradition, medicine, and further deep details about bodhicitta. By 17, he was a skilled physician. He then studied the filigree of realizations at several Nyingma, Kagyu, Kadam, and Sakya monasteries, memorizing the texts in just a few days. He continued to travel the most famous monasteries at that time, studying the 5 major Geshe training topics and the Indian tenet systems. He received teachings on the Kadam Lamrim teachings and also numbers and numbers of tantric empowerments, including the Sakya tradition of Lamdre, the Kagyu tradition of the 6 teachings of Naropa. He studied poetic composition, astrology, and mandala construction. In all his studies, he only had to hear an explanation once. Then he understood and remembered it perfectly. And Alex puts that after this, as is the case with His Holiness the 4th Dalai Lama. So evidently His Holiness has the same talent. He had strong renunciation. He lived extremely humbly, kept his vows purely. He easily achieved shamatha, which is a still and settled state of mind, and vipassana, which is an exceptionally perceptive state of mind, never satisfied with his level of learning. He then came under the care of one of the main teachers of the Sakya tradition back then, Rendawa. And this is where Tsongkhapa wrote the Migtsema, beautiful poem about the 3 different Buddhas as an offering to Rendawa, who then rededicated it to Tsongkhapa. And we will chant this tonight when we do our procession. I mean, he at the age of 20, he's studying the Abhidharma. He's beginning to write. He's doing many retreats. He already has disciples by the time he's 21, and took his full monk ordination sometime in his 20s. At that point, he studied and analyzed the entire Kangyo and Tengyur, the translated direct teachings of the Buddha and their Indian commentaries. Also memorized, did a commentary on the Golden Rosary of Excellent Explanations, which is the Prajnaparamita, a commentary on the Prajnaparamita. He synthesized and discussed all 21 Indian commentaries. And what they say about what, this is from Alex Berzin, by the way, from his website. It said that whatever he wrote, he substantiated with quotes from the entire span of Indian and Tibetan Buddhist literature, comparing and critically editing even different translations. Unlike previous scholars, he never shied away from explaining the most difficult and obscure passages in any text. Normally, he would memorize each day 17 double-sided Tibetan pages of 9 lines on each side. That was his normal. Once, some scholars held a memorizing contest to see who would memorize the most pages before the sun hit the banner on the roof of the monastery. Tsongkhapa won with 4 pages, which he recited fluently with no mistakes. The closest could only do 2.5, and with a lot of difficulty. So he continued to take tantric empowerments. He continued to study Tantra, especially Kala Chakra. And then soon after that, he did his first major tantric retreat, studying the 6 teachings of Naropa, among many others, and had great realizations. Then he met this incredible Karma Kagyu Lama Umapa when he wished to study the practice of Manjushri, Dharma, Chakra, and Madhyamaka. This great master knew and understood both of those teachings. He was from the Sakya tradition. This great master had studied Madhyamaka with the Sakya tradition, and since childhood had had daily visions of Manjushri. Tsongkhapa and he became mutual teacher and disciple. Lama Umapa checked with Tsongkhapa to get confirmation that the teachings he received in his visions of Manjushri were correct. This is very important, since visions can be influenced by demons. Together, they did an extensive retreat on Manjushri, and from this time, Tsongkhapa received direct instructions from Manjushri and was able to receive all the answers to all of his questions. During this retreat, Tsongkhapa did not feel he had a proper understanding of Madhyamaka, and among other things, some of the tantric commentaries. So Manjushri said, "Go do a very long retreat, and then you'll understand the notes you have taken from my instructions." So this is the retreat that he did with his 8 closest disciples, where he did the 100,000 prostrations to each of the 35 Buddhas. And he did 18 sets of 100,000 mandala offerings and studied the Avantamsaka Sutra. The Chinese emperor was quite impressed and heard about him and invited him to become his tutor, but Tsongkhapa excused himself, saying he was too old and wanted to stay in retreat. So then I wanted to go to, I'll finish this up with the 4 great deeds that he has been credited for, among other things. The first was the renovation of the statue of Maitreya and the subsequent great festival he organized during the Tibet New Year in 1400, which housed the statue. The second was an extensive teaching on the Vinaya for the ordained, which he and Rendawa gave for several months at Damse Dang, thereby revitalizing the tradition of monasticism in Tibet. The third was the establishment of Molam, the great prayer festival in Lhasa, beginning a tradition that still goes on now, devoting the first 2 weeks of the Tibet New Year for the prayers of universal well-being for the whole planet. Tsongkhapa donated everything he himself had received from benefactors to support this event, and offered many ornaments made of gold and precious stones to the famous statue of the Buddha in the main temple. And then the 4th great deed was the construction of Ganden. Ganden means the joyous and is the Tibetan name given to the pure land of Maitreya. This monastery was completed and consecrated in 1410. During his last years, he devoted much of his energy to giving extensive teachings. He passed away in 1419 at the age of 62, attaining awakening after his death by achieving the illusory body instead of going through the bardo. So, may we be inspired by this remarkable being. Make prayers today that we may meet him, have him be one of our teachers in future lives, to be able to understand correctly the nature of reality, to develop bodhicitta, and to be able to keep our monastic vows purely, and to always be able to have ordination as one of our keen interests in all of our lives from now until we awaken. So for today, may we all be blessed by Lama Tsongkhapa's presence in our world and still feeling him. I mean, 600 years is not that long in the age of the world to have a being of that capacity, of that awakened mind on this earth during this time, and to know that his blessings still abound and that we have all of his teachings, including the Lamrim Chenmo, which is one of the basic fundamental practices and teachings and studies here at the Abbey. So may we really attain awakening for the benefit of all beings, using him as our source of inspiration.